Tak więc zaczynamy. Now let me start the first part of our conference. Please stay with us because we have a very special guest today, which is one of the most famous European economists. I think that he is a very positive thinker. He combines cultural, religion and other studies with area of the economy. Therefore, today he is with us and will be talking about the sin of jealousy. Mr. Tomáš Sedláček. Good morning. We are very glad having you with us.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. I'm surprised, really. Professor
Sedláček. Maybe można po czeski zkusimy. Maybe
Professor
better
Sedláček,
in English.
where are you today? Because we know that we are not in your origin city, Prague.
I am sending you my best greetings from actually Kurdistan in the northern part of Iraq. We are now in the city of Suleymania, and I'm trying to help the local Kurdish government with their reforms. And I just came from the museum of the wars that have been happening here not even 30 years ago. So I have personally, I have seen with my own eyes what wrath can do. I believe this was one of the topics of your conference. So I'm sending you best regards actually from the oldest region where our civilization came from. This is the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia, where the king Gilgamesh ruled many thousand years ago.
So we are very impressed. But now let's start your speech, which is entitled Is Envy a Desire for Others to be Less Fortunate? And before we are starting, let me assure our audience that after your speech we will have 15 minutes for Q&A session, and during this speech all the participants will have a possibility to ask questions via social media.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for organizing such a conference on a very interesting topic, and I also think it's quite timely. So I hope you can hear me well, and let me give a couple of thoughts about the topic of today, which is envy. Now, envy is from the 7 cardinal sins. I must also say that we have 7 cardinal virtues, some of which have been occupied by the field of economics. I think envy and even maybe greed is something that is a negative emotion. Of course, it's one of the cardinal sins. But also in the recent years, we have discovered that it can be, if it is well managed, quite a useful subject. Now, we have very many myths in our Christian tradition, but also in our folklore about plowing with the devil. And there have been quite a number of economic texts focusing on the obsession of self, which is in a way greed, and which is in a way envy. So even though these are very negative sentiments, people like Thomas Aquinas and Adam Smith, interestingly enough, together argue that it is one of those sins that you can use as an engine. Now, using something negative as an engine is, of course, a little bit tricky. The devil, if I go to the old mythology, the devil can trick you. This is one of the basic characteristics of the mythology of evil, that he is a tricking entity. We know this from the story of the Garden of Eden, where evil is represented as a snake. Evil is not represented as some sort of a demon or a ghost-like figure that we have it from the horror genre, but it is represented as a snake. Now, snake is something that you don't see for a very long time, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, it bites. So this is also, we know that this animal was the most cunning of all animals. But then we have a very strong, I would say maybe Christian and economic tradition of plowing with the devil. Let me start with Thomas Aquinas, who actually argues that it is necessary for some evil to exist in order for greater evils to be avoided. So I don't remember the Latin part now, but back in Prague I have the wise books. But if I translate it somewhat loosely into English, Thomas Aquinas, in his Summa Theologica, argues that God necessarily allows for some evil, because if those evils would be completely destroyed, a lot of good things would be destroyed as well. So we have this folk story, folk mythology about a saint called Prokop. I don't know whether you have this in Polish tradition as well, but he was a man who was plowing his field, and the devil came and killed the ox. And instead of the saint of being very angry and maybe expelling the devil to the burning fires of hell, he made him to crawl into a wheel, and he actually used the devil as a power for his plow, and he plowed with the devil. So now let's focus on envy. I know that in your conference in the previous days, you have had the topics of greed, pride, sloth, gluttony, and wrath. I think we have gone through all of them in the history. I don't think we need to argue very much how greedy we Europeans were, or how pride we were of our economic success, or maybe other things. And gluttony is also something that we have engaged quite strongly. I mean, gluttony is something when you eat more than you necessarily have to. This is a very strong feature of our age. In today's world, more people die of obesity than they die of hunger. The world has been improving in recent years. In the recent 20, 30 years, the world globally, if you look at the Gini coefficient, it went down. I mean, the difference between the rich and the poor used to be huge, and it is decreasing. It has been decreasing, definitely before the COVID period. We have also seen more people being raised out of poverty. There are now the majority of the population of Earth is living above a minimum wage. It is living above $1.25 a day, which isn't anything luxurious, but at least you can live of it. So whether we have come to this because of kindness of mankind or because of the spread of capitalism, this is something that I leave to you. This is of course a very impressive and hard debate. But it could be argued that pride and vanity and maybe even gluttony has given a world more good than voluntary help that people used to do, for example, in the Middle Ages. But I'm not arguing now. This is not the case. This is just something that that you can go and see. Very interesting debate taking place. Now, so let's go one by one. Greed, pride, sloth, gluttony, wrath, and then of course I will focus on envy. Let me start with greed and how COVID is changing that. COVID is an extremely interesting thing for intellectuals, I think, because we have never seen anything like this. This has really put a stop sign to the world of the economic fetish, so to speak, and there is nothing we can do. The whole energy of mankind has never been stopped in such a way in the history of mankind. I mean, of course, we have had warlike situations. We had situations where the economy had to be suspended in order to focus on something else, whether it is the winning the war or fighting floods. This is some things that happen, for example, in my country quite frequently. So the economy goes to standstill, and people's energy is diverted to do something else. Now, this time, the energy of the people is halted. We really don't know was soll man tun, what to do. Of course, there is a great potential of moving into a digital arena, but that is a completely whole new world of economy. It is the economy where we don't produce matter, but we produce thought. This is, for example, a good example. Schooling is also a good example. Schooling or education is something that in more and more fields doesn't require manipulation with matter, but it requires manipulation with thoughts. The whole idea of science and other intellectual disciplines, such as humanities, or reading, or studying different languages, etc., etc. These are all matters of the mind, and those can be moved into intellectual production. But the classical understanding of economics, the classical production, is definitely being minimized to the point of sloth. Now, sloth is laziness, if I may translate that to a certain degree. And we are now, in a way, a huge part of the population is forced to be non-active, or to be not active in the body, but to be active on the digital arena. And this is something that I have been devoting a lot of my thinking, that we are now constructing ourselves a new, little bit mythological world of the internet. Even this conference is to a certain degree mythological, because it looks like we are meeting each other. It looks like we are seeing each other, but in fact, we are seeing and meeting each other on a mythological space of the flat screen of your device. Pride is also something that is taking a completely different spin in the Corona pandemic time. We Czechs, for example, have been very proud. We've had pride, a sinful, evil form of pride, because in the spring, you may recall, we did pretty well. We had very little numbers of infections, and our politicians, in my view, very stupidly, but they have been boasting that we are, best in COVID, we are better than other nations, and we have now become the worst. At least in the last week, we were the worst. Unfortunately, I'm seeing the rise of other countries inflicted by COVID. And the pride of these countries is going down. And it's quite interesting that there is no clear, let's say, no clear guiding line to what countries are inflicted and whose are not. So Belgium, for example, or the United States of America, or our pride, this is something that I think, will be very careful about being so proud. Germany, just 2 weeks ago, used to be the most excellent country when it comes to COVID infection, and now they are also going to face a sort of a lockdown. So this pride before fall is an interesting spin, or has an interesting spin in today's dimension. So gluttony is something that is being suspended. We cannot go to these fabulous restaurants. Everybody is more or less forced to eat average food and cook at the privacy of their home. So in certain respect, our grandeur that we've been spread all over the world and has now shrunk us, so to speak, inside our own skin. We have to meet with oneself. We cannot use the advantages of the specialization as much as we had in the past. So all these things, greed, pride, sloth, gluttony, is something that is being changed, or let's say maybe challenged or redirected to something else. Now, let me focus on envy. Now, envy, as I have written in the preliminary text that I was to send to you, I think envy can be both good and also evil. Envy can be good if I say, I envy you your education, or I envy you your peace of mind, meaning I would like to be as educated as you are, or I would like to learn to have a peaceful, tranquil mind like you do. So this could be sort of a positive, motivational part of envy. In every language, this is a little bit different, but I envy you, and it's also good for you, your education. I envy, I wish I could be as good as you, and I'm going to try to be as good as you for the benefit of my spirit, my soul, or perhaps even the benefit of others and mankind. So it can lead to competition. This is something that that could be good. Evil part of envy, and that's maybe more typical side of the nasty parts of our tradition is, and I see this in many traditions and in many fairy tales, and also in common jokes that we have today. That's the whole idea of I don't want you to be better than me. I would wish for you to decrease your abilities so that I wouldn't have to try so well. So I think in some of our countries we have the saying that God comes to Mr. N and says, whatever I give to you, wish for whatever you want, and I will give the double to your neighbor. And this person comes and says, can you kill my goat? And this is the negative part of envy. That's the wish for everyone to be below me, to be not better than me. And so here comes the cutting edge. This is something that Aristotle, 2,300 years ago, had in his mind when he said that every virtue, when over-exercised, can turn into a vice. Even motherly love can turn into something evil if it's overdone, or a love between man and woman can turn into jealousy if it's overdone. Trying to bring up your children in prosperity, if overdone, can lead to the spoiling of the children and destroying their human potential if they are cushioned for the whole of their lives in the protective atmosphere of their parents. So here we are in a situation which is undisputably the Shabbat of the world. You can also look at it that in a way that we've been forced to pause, and this is something that's very good for the nature. This is something that's very good, I think, also for our psyche. This is something that gives us the time to reflect. It also made us realize that envy and sort of growth and the feeling of better and more consumption isn't something that can lead us into the future. We are happy to stay flat, and in most countries, the level of GDP will go down. Luckily enough, we are so rich as a civilization, a Western civilization, that we can afford this without being really having to bite the dust, so to speak. So one last thought, because I don't want to take any more time. I want to leave space for debate. Is that to some extent these Christian virtues that we maybe the most devoted Christians had in their hearts 2,000 years ago, let's go back all the way, have moved from heart into institutions. We are caring for each other not because of charity, but we are caring about each other through the pension system or through other institutions. And this is something that I think is something interesting to study. Is it better when our morality is forced upon? We have decided, Polish society in the same way like Czech society, that we will institutionally care for the sick, that we will institutionally care for the poor, that we will institutionally care for the widows and for the orphans. They don't have to wait for our alms. They don't have to wait for our charity. They are legally entitled to be socially cared for. Now, we as a society, we like this. We agreed on this. There is no society in our region that wants to dismantle the pension system. So these vices today, the morality of these vices has moved from personal realm to the realm of a societal institutions. This is also why when something goes wrong, we blame not the morals of us, but the institutions of us that represent us. So it's also interesting to look at our morality not only from a position of self, but also from a position of the society as a whole. So let me just perhaps end with envy is something that, in a way, is making myself feel more entitled than the others. Now there is a story in New Testament about the Last Judgment, when Jesus divides the sheep, the good ones, from the goats. And the sheep are surprised. How come we've never fed you? We've never clothed you when you were sick. We didn't know that we were doing something good. If you recall the story, Jesus says, "Come to me, you righteous, because you have clothed me when I was naked, you have fed me when I was hungry, and you have healed me when I was sick." And these good people say, "But when? We never saw you, we never fed you, we don't have any recollection of our morality." And Jesus says, "Well, what you have done to the least of my brethren, you have done unto me." And then the goats, they believe that they have done all these good things, but they are surprised, they are ignorant of how immoral they have been. I'm thinking in my head, maybe if this happened today, this is of course a little bit of a tongue in cheek, but I just imagine the same situation that, a standard European would be at the final judgment, and God would say, "Okay, come and enter into my peace because you have clothed me when I was naked," etc., etc., etc. And we say, "When? We never did that." And he said, "Well, not you personally, but your pension scheme and your social work that you have been paying, your taxes that you have been paying to your government, those have been used to feed me and clothe me and heal me." So I call this moral exoskeleton. We are no longer so moral, so to speak, as individuals, but our morality has shifted into these institutions, so that we don't really have the choice to be completely ignorant of the needs of others. Now, whether an automated morale is better than a spontaneous morale, this is a question that I'm having with my friends, philosophers, and those who devote their time of study to morality. But my personal opinion is that an entity that does good automatically without even thinking about it is a better entity than an entity that has a moral dilemma. So, for example, if I find a child lying on the street in the Middle Ages, I would have to have a moral dilemma whether to take care of that child. Or, so I would have to say, okay, do I have time for this? Do I have the money? How do I this? And you would have to think about it a little bit. I hope you would decide, of course, the right way. The situation today is, if I find some poor baby lying on the street, what I do is I press a button and I activate a moral exoskeleton that will take institutions, that will take care of this baby in my stead. In fact, I'm not even allowed to take care of the baby myself. You know, this is something that I can't do. I can't just take the baby and take care of it. I have to give it to the institutions. So I believe this is also something that that these institutions under which we live are helping us to be more moral and more Christian at the end of the day, many times not even knowing. So this is something that we have used ourselves to battle our own sense of pride and our own sense of envy. So I believe that when we create our institutions in a way that we can take the positive sides of envy, I want to be as educated as the best thinkers of the world. I want to be able to understand as many fields as I say, and actually listening to a teacher is I want to take from you something that I very much admire, and I want to be like you. I don't want you to be more stupid and come to my level, or to be more poor. So if we take the positive side of envy and we institutionalize and we create good institutions that take care of the fallbacks or fall-throughs that happen in our society, then this is something that could be harvested for a betterment of a society. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very much looking to speak with the rest of you and the panelists. The panel is really excellent, and I've been looking forward to this.
Professor Sedláček, thank you very much for your speech. That was a perfect conclusion. Exactly. We have two questions to you. Let's start with the fact that when you have said that economy stops at this moment, the energy is halted, and of course the Silicon Valley grows up. Inequalities will grow? What do you think? These inequalities will grow?
So inequality has been decreasing before COVID. It has been decreasing quite significantly. We, as I said, I didn't finish the thought. We are now living in a society where more people die out of, let's say, obesity than out of hunger. Now, is this a good news or bad news? I don't know. But to me, it's a little bit, I'd rather live in a world where people die out of obesity, because that's something that they can work with, than poverty when they have nothing to put in their stomach. Of course, both are bad, but we also have more suicides than we have violent death caused by others. Again, this is even a more difficult moral question to answer, which one is better, and I will leave the answer to you. This is too sensitive a question, I think, for me to address. But the fact that we are dying out of obesity, I personally think a sort of a slightly better than people dying without.
Okay, thank you very much for this answer. What do you think after a pandemic of COVID? We as a mankind will be better than now?
This is a grand question. I am just writing an article here which says "Bye bye, real world." In my sort of a philosophical thesis, we are now moving. We have been always moving into a mythological world, be it philosophy or the world of art, or even religion. Religion automatically supposes the existence of two worlds. One world is the world of now and here, the profane, our daily world, let's say. Instead of daily bread, let's call it our daily world. And then there was another world, the world of angels and demons and maybe different dimensions of reality. And today we are moving into an abstract world. We are immigrating. There are many ways how this could turn us into a better mankind. We are, for example, less polluting. We've realized that what Greta wanted when she was speaking, a year ago, most of the adults said, "Oh, come on, she's crazy. That's childish. You should study more because we can't curb our flights by 5%. That would destroy the economy and this and that." And now we've curbed our flights to almost 100% or to zero, by 100% to zero. And of course, the industry is very hardly hit, but it is no collapse. Our race is continuing. Also, we now have to leave the manual work to robots. This is a trend that has been happening in the world. Now it's accelerating. So the danger, it could be that we end up as a worse nation. If you realize, I think one of the best things that happened to Europe was the European Union in the last 50 years. And in the first month of the spring outbreak of Corona, it was as if European Union didn't exist. We solved everything by ourselves. Every nation ducked and did whatever they could, and international cooperation and solidarity and research was something that was like an echo of some very, very distant memory. And I think in a way that's okay. I mean, when you have something unexpected, this is our very primitive brain. When something jumps at you from the dark, you duck. That's you don't even think about it. It's our reptile brain. And that's what we did in spring. We just said, okay, me first. I don't care about anybody else. Let's protect my own people, my own family. And now I think is the time to say, okay, well, let's stop solving this with the reptile brain, and let's bring this a little bit more into the frontal loop of cortex, and let's actually, for example, do research together, or let's try and, in my opinion, it would be the best thing if we could come up with vaccine together, if we could do research together, but also most importantly, if we had a common matrix of say, okay, if this is happening, then we should lock down this. Because then it wouldn't be up to the local politicians to try to win political points of not locking down or locking down. It's a politically very bad arena to be solving viral question of epidemiology or well, you know what I'm trying to say. So an international cooperation in this would be really nice. It's also the first time that the whole world got sick. Back in the day, it was, maybe this part of the world and that part of the world. Now the whole world is sick.
Professor, thank you very much for being with us today. We hope meet you soon, and of course we wish you a good luck in your Iraqi mission, including a quality of health. I think this is a fundamental value these days.
Exactly. I have just been tested and I'm negative, so I wish you all stay negative, but be positive.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you and goodbye.